You ever notice how some things just show up in life? No warning, no explanation, just there one day like they belonged, all along? That's how it was with him. I don't know where the black dog came from. No one does. He wasn't born here, that's for sure. People in Maple Hollow remember everything, and no one could say they'd seen a pregnant dog wandering around or a litter of pups in the woods. He just appeared. One frosty morning in early March, while the air was still stiff with the bite of winter, he was sitting right there, right at the edge of the school parking lot, still as a statue, watching. It wasn't like he was begging or barking. He didn't move much at all. He just watched, every kid, every parent, every teacher, like he was trying to find someone. Or maybe like he'd lost someone and was waiting for them to come back. His fur was jet black. Not shiny, not clean, more like the dull, matted kind that had been rained on too many nights in a row. You could see his ribs from where he stood. One of his front legs had a bad limp. He dragged it a little like it had healed wrong after a break. And then there were his eyes. Man, his eyes. One was pale blue. The kind of blue that feels cold when it looks at you. The other was amber, deep, almost golden. You don't forget eyes like that. Especially when they don't match. First couple days, people mostly ignored him. A few kids pointed. A couple moms pulled their children a little closer. One guy threw a crumpled sandwich wrapper at him and yelled, "Scat." The dog didn't budge. He'd just sit there, quiet, like he knew he wasn't welcome, but didn't have anywhere else to go. By the third day, the whispers started. You know what they say about black dogs, right? It's bad luck. Omen of death. Those eyes aren't normal. That dog ain't right. You'd think this was the 1800s with how quick people started acting like he was cursed. But that's small towns for you. People believe stories more than they believe facts. And once a rumor catches fire here, it spreads like dry grass. By the end of the week, kids were calling him names: devil dog, grim, omen. That last one stuck. They started blaming him for random stuff. Mrs. Penner's car battery died on a cold morning. Guess who got blamed? Omen was near the driveway, she said. I felt something off. A water pipe burst at the corner store. The old man who ran the place swore the dog had walked past just 20 minutes before. The thing is, no one saw him do anything wrong. He didn't bite, bark, or chase. He never even growled. He just existed, and for some folks, that was enough. Eventually, they started chasing him off. One guy swung a broom at him in broad daylight. Another threw a rock. You could tell by the way the dog flinched that this wasn't new for him. He'd been chased before, hurt before. But here's the strange part. He never left. Every morning, he'd be back, sitting near the school fence. Same spot, same limp, same haunted eyes. It was like he had nowhere else to go, or like he was waiting for someone who hadn't come yet. People saw a bad omen. But I think that dog, he was just looking for a little kindness. Someone to see him for what he really was. And eventually someone did. But that comes later. Now, while everyone else in Maple Hollow was busy whispering about Omen and making sure he stayed far away, there was one kid who didn't look at him with fear or hate. His name was Eli. Eli was a quiet boy, kind of the shy type you'd walk past in the hallway without really noticing. He didn't have many friends. His clothes were a little worn, and sometimes he stuttered when he talked. But there was something different about him, something softer, something gentle. See, Eli's life wasn't easy. His dad had left years ago, and his mom worked long hours just to keep food on the table. Most days, Eli felt like he was invisible, like he was a shadow in his own home. One chilly afternoon, right after school let out, Eli was walking home when he noticed the black dog again. He was curled up under a bench near the playground, shivering, looking colder than the weather outside. Most kids would have crossed to the other side of the street. But not Eli. Without thinking much about it, he took out the half-eaten sandwich from his lunchbox and gently placed it beside the dog. The dog didn't jump or growl. He just looked up at Eli with those mismatched eyes, one cold, one warm, and slowly, he sniffed the food. The next day, Eli came back with another piece of bread. Then another the day after that. At first, the dog stayed just out of reach. But with every passing day, he got closer. And soon, Eli noticed the limp wasn't slowing the dog down as much as before. One morning, Eli sat down near the dog for the first time. He didn't say anything, just sat. They were two lonely souls, sitting side by side. Eli whispered softly, "I'm going to call you Shadow." Shadow's tail gave the faintest wag. That little moment, that was the beginning of a friendship no one in Maple Hollow saw coming. You see, Eli wasn't blind to the whispers or the rumors. He'd heard the stories too, but none of that mattered. To Eli, Shadow wasn't a curse or a sign of bad luck. He was someone who needed a friend, just like him. Over the next few weeks, Eli started watching Shadow more closely. He noticed things others didn't, like how Shadow flinched whenever someone raised a hand, how he would quietly follow Eli from a distance but never get too close. There was a sadness in Shadow's eyes that spoke louder than any bark. One afternoon, Eli asked his teacher about black dogs and omens. She smiled sadly and told him, "Sometimes people need stories to explain what they don't understand. But not every story is true." Eli believed her, and in his heart, he knew Shadow wasn't bad luck. Shadow was just lost. Even though Eli and Shadow were quietly building their friendship, the rest of Maple Hollow wasn't getting any kinder. In fact, things started to get worse. You see, fear has a way of spreading faster than kindness. And in small towns, that fear can turn into anger real quick. Some folks began blaming Shadow for every little thing that went wrong. The chickens that disappeared from old Mr. Harper's farm? Shadow's to blame. The mysterious holes in Mrs. Jensen's garden? It's that black dog. Even when the power flickered during a thunderstorm, fingers pointed at Shadow like he was some kind of dark cloud following the town. Rumors turned into whispers. Whispers turned into plans. The town council called a meeting to discuss what to do about the dog nobody wanted. Animal control was called. Now, for Shadow, this was the moment where everything could have ended. The fear, the hate, the rumors, they all came crashing down like a storm. Eli heard the news just before school one morning. His stomach dropped. He couldn't imagine what would happen to Shadow if the officers came. When he got to school that day, the spot under the bench was empty. Shadow was gone. Eli's heart ached. For days, Eli searched every corner of town. He called out Shadow's name in the woods behind the school, by the creek, even near the old mill. But Shadow was nowhere. The silence was heavier than the cold winter nights. And every morning, Eli left pieces of food in the same spot, hoping maybe Shadow would come back. Then one early morning, just before dawn, Eli's eyes caught a familiar shape. There under the bench was Shadow. Thinner, scarred, with his limp worse than ever. But he was alive. And he was waiting. Eli's chest filled with hope. It was clear Shadow had nowhere else to go. No matter how much the town pushed him away, Shadow kept coming back. Because sometimes, being alone means you don't have anywhere else to be. Eli decided right then and there, he would protect Shadow no matter what. Spring had barely arrived when the school announced its annual camping trip. It was a big deal for kids at Maple Hollow Elementary, an adventure away from classrooms and chores, a chance to run wild in the woods and make memories that would last forever. Eli almost didn't want to go.
His mom was worried.
She had been working late shifts and didn't feel like letting him wander off into the forest. But Eli insisted. He told her one simple thing that made her hesitate. Shadow will keep me safe. Shadow, the dog the whole town feared, was Eli's only comfort. The morning of the trip, the sky was clear and bright. Kids buzzed with excitement, backpacks stuffed with marshmallows and flashlights, ready to explore. Teachers lined up to count heads and check supplies. The forest smelled fresh, earthy, and alive. As they followed the trail, Eli stayed near the back, keeping an eye out. Shadow trailed silently behind him, just far enough to stay out of sight, but close enough to protect. Everything felt perfect until the sky darkened. A sudden rainstorm rolled in faster than anyone expected. Thick clouds swallowed the sun, and the wind picked up, shaking the branches overhead. The path quickly turned slippery, muddy, and dangerous. The group hurried forward, but Eli lagged behind, slipping on the wet leaves. The other kids' voices faded into the distance. Then, disaster. Eli's foot caught on a hidden root. He tumbled forward, arms flailing, and slid toward the edge of a steep ravine. Panic gripped him as he reached for a branch, but the ground beneath it cracked. His hands struggled to hold on, fingers trembling. Below, jagged rocks and a rushing creek awaited. Eli screamed, his voice swallowed by the storm. And that's when Shadow appeared. From nowhere, the black dog leapt through the rain, muscles tense, eyes locked on Eli. He bit the collar of Eli's jacket and anchored himself in the mud, refusing to let go. The branch cracked again. Eli's fingers slipped, but Shadow held tight. With every ounce of strength, the dog pulled, dragging Eli back from the edge. For a moment, all they could hear was the pounding rain and Eli's ragged breathing. Then, silence. They collapsed together on the wet ground, soaked and shaking, but alive. By the time the first searchers arrived, the storm was starting to die down. Flashlights sliced through the fading rain, eyes searching the dark forest floor for any sign of Eli. The teachers were frantic, calling his name again and again. Other kids whispered prayers and wiped tears from their cheeks. Then out of the shadows they spotted something moving. A small, soaked figure lying next to a black shape on the muddy ground.
It was Eli.
And it was Shadow. Eli's mother ran forward, sobbing as she wrapped her arms around him. And right there, muddy and trembling, was the dog who everyone had called bad luck. But now, Shadow wasn't bad luck. He was a hero. The news spread through Maple Hollow like wildfire. The very dog the town had feared and shunned had saved a child's life. People started asking questions. Why did Shadow stay, despite the hate? Why did he risk everything for a boy he barely knew? Eli never hesitated. He said, "Shadow saved me because I was his friend. Because I never gave up on him." Slowly, the town began to change. Some people brought food. Others built a small shelter near the schoolyard for Shadow. Even the mayor spoke at the next town meeting. "He's not bad luck," she said. "He's family." Shadow didn't need much. Just a warm place to sleep and a boy who believed in him. And Eli? He finally had someone who would never leave his side. After that night, everything in Maple Hollow felt different. The whispers about Shadow changed tone, from fear to wonder, from suspicion to respect. It wasn't magic or luck that saved Eli, but something much stronger. Loyalty, trust, and love. People who once chased Shadow away now stopped to pet him gently. Kids who once ran screaming at his approach now played near him, learning that his limp was just part of who he was, not a sign of danger. Eli and Shadow became inseparable. Shadow followed Eli everywhere, through school halls, into the quiet woods, and even to the edge of town where the sun set over the hills. He was more than a dog now. He was Eli's guardian, his shadow in the best sense of the word. The town built a little shelter for Shadow near the park, and the local vet made sure he got care. For the first time, Shadow felt safe. But what meant the most was that Eli had found a friend who understood him, a silent companion who never judged or left, no matter how hard things got. And in return, Shadow gave Eli his life. They had called him bad luck for so long. But what they didn't realize was that Shadow was the luck that saved a life. The luck of a second chance. The luck of a true friend. The luck of coming home.